Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what is making headlines with the editor-in-chief of the National World Cities newspaper group, Nancy Fielder, and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simon. They will be with us until just before midnight. So let's take a look at what is on some of those front pages. The worst child serial killer in modern UK history. That's how the Eye describes the conviction of Lucy Letby for murdering 7 babies in her care and the attempted murder of 6 others. The Guardian leads with Letby too and the sheer magnitude of her crimes. The trial was held in Manchester at the Crown Court, and the Manchester Evening News has this simple 2-word headline: pure evil. This is the front page of the Times: a cold, calculating killer. The Telegraph claims Letby was left free to carry on killing after hospital bosses ignored warnings of what was going on. The Mail reports there were 10 missed chances to stop her. The Daily Express says there were chances for the murdered babies to have been saved. Now, one of the big unanswered questions is posed by the Mirror: how many more? Well, away from the Letby case, the Financial Times leads with news that the Japanese conglomerate SoftBank has bought a controlling stake in the UK microchip designer Arm ahead of its flotation on the US stock market next month. And the Daily Star looks ahead to the World Cup final on Sunday, predicting that the Lionesses are going to win on penalties, and we'll tell you how they predicted that later. A reminder, by scanning the QR code you see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages while you watch along with us. Now, tonight we're joined by the editor-in-chief of the National World Cities newspaper group, Nancy Fielder, and by the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simon. So let's get into those front pages. Nancy, thank you both for being with us. And let's start, Jake, if we can, with the Manchester Evening News. As I said, Manchester Crown Court was the scene for the Letby trial, and their headline is simple but effective.
That's right. I mean, pure evil does sum it up. And I've been sitting there for the last half hour reading story after story about the Letby case, and I can tell you I feel very disturbed and quite shocked. It's difficult to read. The Telegraph in particular had a couple of scenes that it described of there was a baby that she had killed that was dying and vomited a quarter of its weight in blood. And while that was happening, she was in the room while they were trying to save this baby. The parents were just outside. She was in the room trying to look busy in the corner to distract attention from herself. Didn't show any emotion at all. Another detail that jumped out at me was that she presented a lock of hair from one of the babies that she had killed to the parents of that baby, as well as prints of the hands and feet, as well as pictures that she'd taken without their knowledge of the baby.
I mean, she was contacting them on Facebook as well, looking them up at least on Facebook.
She was stalking them on Facebook, looking at the impact of her actions on the grieving families, showed an uncanny interest in them. And this is a woman who, the thing that nobody can understand is why she did it. You know, with serial murderers in the past, there's usually been some kind of twisted sexual motive. That doesn't seem to be the case with Lucy Letby. No one understands why. People described her as being a Mary Poppins figure, that made everybody feel at ease, who's always caring and looking after people. Very normal, went on holidays to Ibiza, listened to Craig David, danced salsa, may have been having an affair with a married registrar at the at the hospital. That we can go into that maybe. But nothing really too much out of the ordinary, apart from the fact that she clearly was very much out of the ordinary. Yeah,
one of the consultants who was suspicious of her said that when the suspicions were raised, not nice Lucy, just tells you sort of how she was viewed. And Nancy, I mean, the headline there is pure evil, but it's this kind of dual side of her as well. As Jake was mentioning there, you know, keeping the lock of the hair, having the prints of the hands, and in much of the reporting, in each of these cases where she was convicted of killing these children, she was kind of hanging around at times afterwards, seeing the reaction of the crimes that she'd committed.
She was. I think all of us are struggling to get our head around it. She just looks so normal. But how could anybody commit such acts of wickedness? I mean, these were tiny, tiny babies. They were babies who the mums would have been worried whether they would make it anyway. They were often premature. They were To be a new mom, I've got 3 children. To be a new mom, nobody has confidence in their own skills. You trust what people tell you. You're in a hospital situation with people there to support you and guide you and help you. And what this woman has done, not only to the victims, which is unspeakable, and to their families and to the friends and to her colleagues, but to every mom who's got to go into hospital and trust that their baby will be safe. It's awful. I mean, it's really, really difficult to be a new parent, and for her to just be so wicked, it's absolutely staggering. I'm struggling to get my head around that anybody could do that. If it was a Hollywood movie, we would say it's very far removed. She couldn't possibly have done it. But your heart just bleeds for those poor, poor families.
Yeah, many families affected. Of course, there were, a family that had triplets that were affected by this. Let's move on to the front of the Daily Telegraph, if we can, Nancy. And this is, I guess, where this story is going to go from here, the investigation as to how it was allowed to happen like this. The government have announced there is going to be an inquiry, and they say they're going to be speedy with that inquiry. But the Telegraph telling us that the NHS ignored warnings and left Letby free to kill.
Yes, I mean, the government are very rarely speedy with their inquiries, are they? But this one needs to be quick. I think the parents and the families need answers as much as anybody will get them. Whether we will ever get true answers as to the motive, I suspect we won't. But you've had interviews tonight, there's interviews in all the papers tomorrow with members of staff who raised concerns, who asked for her to be moved, who actually were even forced to apologise in writing for things they'd said about her while she was killing babies. And because the bosses of the hospital did not act, whether they tried to sweep it under the carpet or whether they just wanted to turn a blind eye, who knows? But actually, babies died because they did that. She could have been stopped earlier. There could have been investigations, and it's just not good enough. I mean, it can't be any more serious, can it, than the complaints were made, and she was allowed to keep killing.
Yeah, Jake, I mean, you would have read a lot of the details, as you said, this evening, and it is astounding to think that there were many, many occasions where, the consultants, the guys who were running the care on the wards are raising their issues, but it seems management didn't want to hear it.
Exactly. I mean, the first thing to say is that the government's launched an independent inquiry, not a public inquiry. So it's more like a fact-finding inquiry. It doesn't have legal powers. It's not led by a judge. And I think it needs to be a public inquiry, a proper public inquiry, not a second-rate inquiry.
Why would they have done it in this way, do you think? Is to speed it up?
I don't know. I mean, it could be that a public inquiry is coming down the line, but that, in my view, needs to happen now. The other thing that really comes out about this is that the consultants and doctors who saw what was happening raised complaints to the managers, and the managers not just ignored them, not just fobbed them off, but actually defended Lucy Letby. When she was taken off the ward into an administrative clerical role, they tried to get her back on the ward. They resisted calls to call the police to deal with what was going on. And there's a lot that's disturbing about this. What we've seen over the last 10 years is twice as many managers employed by the government into the NHS as doctors. This indicates the lack of power that the consultants and doctors have over what they know about. Instead, they have to appeal to management to make a decision, management that's removed from the wards, doesn't know really what's going on. The consultants don't have the power, the management does, and the management did not wield that power responsibly. And this is a serious matter. The debate about the layer of management that's been inserted into the NHS has been going on for a long time as damaging patient outcomes because too much emphasis is placed on management and not enough on the power of the clinicians to make clinical decisions under their own auspices. And this seems to be an indication of how tragic that can be when it goes wrong.